You notice that one of the things that nobody talked about in the 2024 election was COVID. It was not a political issue at all. It's insane.
Why do you think?
Because it's too big to handle. We actually couldn't fit it on stage. And here's the reason why it was too big to handle. So, you basically have all these COVID myths, these populist COVID myths going around,
Is it because it's too big to handle or because the left would have looked bad?
Both. It's the same thing. So not only would the left have looked, COVID was an American Chernobyl. COVID was an American Chernobyl, except it killed 1,000 times as many people, right? Because it was early COVID was a nasty virus. You did not want to get early COVID.
Oh, I got it. I was down for 21 days.
Yeah.
I lost 25 pounds.
Yeah, it was brutal.
Yeah.
It was brutal. As soon as Omicron came out, that should have been the end of it. Actually, there's another conspiracy theory that Omicron was actually a vaccine. Because when Omicron appears, Omicron is great. It saved my life. When I got Omicron, I was like, oh my God.
You got Omicron.
I got Omicron.
Okay. What was the third one?
Delta was nasty. Delta was before Omicron. Delta was nasty. Omicron comes out and has two things about Omicron. One is that it's descended from a strain of virus that hasn't been seen in the wild for 6 months to a year. Okay? Where was it? It wasn't in the wild. It was in the lab. Secondly, it has signs of being adapted to rodents. Maybe it was hanging out in sewer rats. I don't know. Maybe it was hanging out in a freaking lab. Maybe it was actually, someday we will find out that it was actually a good mad scientist who invented Omicron and saved us from this garbage. But to get back to the invention of COVID, here's what happened. And I think this basically says a lot about the way our political system, the way this meritocracy works. So if you want to be a scientist, I'm in a way a scientist.
May I ask you why your eyes?
It's so fucking dramatic. It's just like.
Are you getting emotional truly?
Yeah.
This has happened 4 times in the interview already.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, because it's just like an incredible fucking story. Because let me tell you the true story of COVID. Okay, the true story of COVID was this is the way our country is governed. So you're a scientist. Okay, you probably know a lot of scientists. I dropped out of a PhD program myself. How do you work as a scientist? You're a bureaucrat. You're writing grant proposals. Okay, what does your grant proposal say? This is important. The government should fund it. This is important. Here's what happened with COVID. SARS-1 happens. It's absolutely what it's purported to be. It's a bat virus that gets loose. You ever see the film Contagion? It's a Steven Soderbergh film.
Matt Damon is it Matt Damon?
I think it's Matt Damon.
Yeah.
The technical advisor for Contagion was one of the coronavirus crew. And the virus in Contagion actually is a bat coronavirus. And so
that movie was going viral the first week of COVID, second week of COVID, March, April, whatever it was.
Yeah, it was. I watched it with my late wife when COVID started. If you look at so SARS-1 happens, clearly a real problem. If you're a virologist, you go after real problems because real problems get you grants, right? The problem of bat coronaviruses mutating to become viruses that affect humans, a zoonosis, that's a real thing. Bam. Researchers converge on this like crazy, and they're like, but what are we going to research exactly? Well, we're going to research the possibility that bat coronaviruses will mutate to infect humans. Of course, they're bat viruses. They don't naturally infect humans. But when we find one that comes close, it's a big surprise. And how are they going to mutate? Well, mutations happen randomly in nature. How do we predict? That was one of the names of one of the study programs. How do we predict what mutations could happen in future to make SARS happen again? Well, we'll make them ourselves. And so you basically got this research program, which is completely normal science. This was not a Chinese program. This was an American research program, mainly run out of the University of North Carolina by this guy, Ralph Barrick. And the Peter Daszak is the big grant coordinator for all this stuff. Still walking around free as a bird. And they basically have all of these bureaucratic incentives to act like mad scientists. They basically have, because if you can take a bat coronavirus and mutate it to become dangerous, that's a paper. The paper says bat coronaviruses are dangerous. Please give us more money. This treadmill is still going on, right? And In fact, the guy who replaced Fauci, I think his name is Eichelberger, as the head of American Virology. Fauci has the remarkable distinction of being the guy who supervised this research, then covered it up, and was in charge of the response to it. Truly insane episode.
Wow. And,
Truly
and
insane.
God, and you
literally
pretty much pardoned, so you can't touch them.
I think they could, but they're not. They're not
Auto
going
pen?
to. They're not going to try to prosecute this stuff.
Why do you say that? Why?
Because that's what I've heard from people who were involved.
Why though? Because both sides are implicated?
Because they just don't. That gets more into sort of what the mission of the Republican world in Washington sees itself as doing. They're more like, what would be the point? And I'm like, I can tell you what the point is, but like, they're more like, what would be the point? But let me finish my story because it's a great twist.
Please.
So Fauci is out, he's out with the Trump administration, and certainly I think most Americans do know or suspect that it was a lab leak. Either it was a lab leak or the world's most remarkable coincidence ever. I don't know if you've seen the Jon Stewart clip on COVID. Oh my God, it's the best thing Jon Stewart ever did.
Yeah, of course, with Stephen Colbert.
Yeah.
It's
the best thing. It's the best thing Stewart.
We can't talk about it.
It's the best thing Stewart ever did.
And he was the first guy on the left who did that, and Colbert was uncomfortable.
He destroyed that, right?
Yep.
And like you're just like, God, this guy's talented, right? And the pangolin kissed the bat, whatever, right? So anyway, this guy's out, and Eichelberger is the new head of American Virology. I think that's his name, is in. And Eichelberger's claim to fame, he hadn't worked on bat coronaviruses at all. His claim to fame, his mad scientist, you got to be in the head of the mad scientist. Imagine you're a mad scientist, or you want to be a mad scientist, he's is it Eichelberger? Is the head of the Fauci's replacement. If you want to be a mad scientist, you're in the shower, you're having mad scientist realizations, right? And this mad scientist in the shower is like, I can recreate the 1918 flu. How are you going to recreate the 1918 flu? He's like, well, the 1918 flu spread all around the world, killed 20 million people, whatever, and it infected Alaska. And in Alaska, they have permafrost. And I can go to Alaska and dig up a dead body from the permafrost that died in the 1918 pandemic, and I can resurrect the 1918 flu. And this will make me a famous scientist. And he did that. And now fortunately, I think we're immune to the 1918 flu, but or it didn't leak. But literally, that's how he made his bones as a virologist.
Who again?
I think it's Jay Eichelberger or something like that. It's Fauci's replacement. If you,
who is Fauci's replacement? I'm really curious about this guy now. I'm seeing Hugh.
He's the head of
Auchincloss.
No, that was Fauci's aide.
Gene Marazzo.
No, those were all.
Jeffrey Taubenberger.
Taubenberger. Sorry. Let you.
Jeffrey Taubenberger.
Yeah. There you go. I knew I had it wrong.
Who gave him the job? Who appointed him?
Trump. He's a Trump appointee. And if he was the first to sequence the genome of the influenza virus that caused the 1918 pandemic of Spanish flu. And he published that genome, which means that anyone who can basically print DNA can have themselves a nice new Spanish flu. Right. And so when you basically ask to sort of pull back for a minute, why can't we get the mad scientists out of virology? Why do virologists insist on basically behaving as if their job was to invent dangerous viruses, as though they were mad scientists?
So you would categorize him as a mad scientist?
Well, the thing is, no, actually, he's a totally banal, normal scientist. And what's crazy, what's really important about this regime of experts is the way in which sort of normal people become, by doing normal things, become mad scientists. Because what you're really looking at here with virology, and we'll relate this back to foreign policy in a moment, what you're really looking at here with gain-of-function research in virology is a conflict of interest. Because when you have a conflict of interest, you have the nominal interest of some person or organization, and then you have their actual interest. The nominal interest of virologists is to go to war against viruses, to kill all the viruses, right? If you're a virologist and could snap your fingers and kill all the viruses, that would be optimal. Except, you know what? If you could do that, you wouldn't have a job anymore. Yeah.
That makes sense.
That makes
because
sense. Right. And so what we got is this situation in which the nominal interest of virologists beating viruses is totally at cross purposes with the actual incentive on virologists, which is to make more and more dangerous viruses. So the incentive basically is making them mad scientists. And that's sort of the structural problem.
I totally see that.
And when populists look, at Washington, they don't have this kind of intricate incentive-based theory, but they're like, something is really wrong there, right? And like when they look at the lab leak, they're just like, it's like, well, I think what Peter Thiel once said about, Trump, which was that he was you should take him seriously, but not literally, right? And that's sort of true of like populism in general. Populism sees this thing and it's like, let's take the cartoon with the airplane. Like, suppose you're remember that airline that flew out over the, Indian Ocean and disappeared? If you're an MH370, yeah, you stand up and take control of the cockpit because that plane is going nowhere good, right? And when you see the way this sort of system of the rule of institutions and experts has developed all of these conflicts of interest, so let's go to foreign policy, for example. You're like expanding NATO to the east. Okay, what is expanding NATO to the east? It's gain of function diplomacy. Actually, no one can point to a reason why expanding NATO to the east was a good idea. Many prominent experts warned against it. George Kennan is like, don't do this. William Burns, the CIA head, is like, don't do this. We tell the Russians we're not going to do this. We make them informal promises that we're not going to do this. Then we do it anyway. What the hell are they supposed to think, right? And it's like this compulsion, this sort of bureaucratic compulsion that can't be stopped, that has no, possible bearing on the security of Fort Lauderdale, and it just and it's this, this self-licking ice cream cone, and it's a toxic self-licking ice cream cone. It basically COVID kills 20 million people. How many people has the Ukraine war killed? 500,000?
That was one of the things that I really wanted to know. If there's one of the things that was in my top 5 that I wanted to know what happened, was that, because I think there would be a certain accountability for China as well with the recklessness, even though you were saying she wasn't involved. But let's wrap up with this current event, Iran. What's going on there? Okay.
What's going on
thoughts.
there?
What will happen? What should happen?
Wow. I think that unfortunately the current thing in Iran is going to get a lot of protesters killed and not accomplish anything. I think that when a regime falls, protests don't bring about an end to a regime. When a regime falls, it's because it's lost confidence in itself and it no longer believes in itself. And I don't think the Ayatollahs are at that point yet. Hi there, I'm Curtis Yarvin, aka Mencius Moldbug, and I've created a profile on this fascinating site, Manect, which allows anyone to put in a few dimes and ask me about anything, and I'll take questions on anything that isn't personal. I have many opinions on history, politics, science, economics, and all kinds of interesting things. And if you have a good and interesting question, why not ask it? I might well answer it. Thank you very much.